I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Budge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results.
That Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident.
The royal family blew the lid off a massive secret. They've finally come clean about the shocking circumstances of her death, revealing details that hint at deep-seated issues stretching back generations. Through confessions and tales from those closest to her, like the driver and personal physician, we expose a life filled with unimaginable pressures, loneliness, and a desperate fight against a horrible condition. Tune in to uncover the heart-wrenching stories from her closest confidant about her struggle with a loveless marriage and an oppressive media spotlight. The real story of Princess Diana's life. Princess Diana and the larger British institution. Known for their strict traditions and formal ways, it was shaken by a shocking revelation that could disrupt centuries of tradition and secrecy. In a surprising move, they finally spoke out about the long-hidden details of her death, which had haunted them for years. These details focused on secrets that had been kept under wraps for a long time. An envelope with royal secrets was found at Buckingham Palace, ready to reveal shocking truths. As we dive into the events surrounding her death, it becomes clear that they could no longer hide the truth. It was now laid out for all to see.
The Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident.
There are lots of unanswered questions of what happened in Paris on that night.
Despite their efforts to keep things hidden, the pressure felt by those close to her was undeniable. Prepare yourself for some startling revelations about her that were unknown before. The driver, who spent a lot of time with her, shared his observations about her struggles and frustrations. Because he was so close to her daily life, he was able to see how hard it was for her to keep up with all the demands placed on her. His stories offer a window into her everyday life, showing how even the small details were influenced by what others expected of her. He remembered moments when she found peace in the middle of the chaos, brief moments of joy and laughter despite her busy schedule and the heavy load she carried. This difference between her public image and her private reality is striking. She was adored by so many, yet she felt distant from those around her. His memories show how much she longed for simple, normal moments that gave her a break from her complicated life. Whether it was a quiet drive through beautiful scenery or chatting during long trips, these small moments gave her short-lived relief from her duties. He also spoke about her strong desire to live a life outside of that world, a life where she could truly be herself, without the constant pressure and scrutiny. His stories also revealed her complicated relationship with her security team. There were times when she pushed back against the restrictions they placed on her. This wasn't because she wanted to rebel, but because she wanted to have control over her own life. She often felt trapped by the heavy responsibilities of her role. However, her final days were the most heartbreaking. He shared his thoughts on the tension and unease that seemed to surround her as her life came to a tragic end in Paris. He talked about the growing stress from the non-stop attention of the media and her personal struggles. The memories of that night serve as a reminder of the intense pressure she faced and the sad consequences that followed. But he wasn't the only one with a story to tell. The physician who worked with her also shared important details, talking about her physical and emotional struggles. He specifically mentioned her battle with bulimia, which had a huge impact on both her mind and body. As the dynamics became more difficult and public expectations grew, so did her emotional and physical pain. Her story shows just how connected her emotional challenges were to her health. Paul Burrell, who served as her butler for over 10 years, became much more than just an employee. He became one of her closest confidants. His experiences give us a rare glimpse into her private struggles, especially her troubled marriage to Prince Charles. He shared how trapped she felt in her loveless marriage, constantly longing for the love and compassion that eluded her within the vast, empty walls of the palace. This emotional pain led her to open up to him, sharing her deep sadness and the burden of her struggle with bulimia. She developed this disorder as a way to cope with the intense pressure from both her duties and the expectations placed on her public image. According to him, the constant scrutiny from the media and the institution only made her feel worse, increasing her sense of inadequacy. The need to always look perfect in public became a source of ongoing stress, and her battle with bulimia reflected the emotional distress she was going through. His stories also show us a woman who, despite appearing composed and graceful in public, was wrestling with deep personal conflicts. In the midst of this inner turmoil, she found some relief in her charity work. It gave her a sense of purpose and happiness, allowing her to focus her energy on causes that truly mattered to her. Her involvement in philanthropy didn't just help others, it also helped her cope with some of the emotional weight she was carrying. He also talked about her complicated relationship with the media, which added another layer of stress to her life. While she used the media's influence to highlight her charitable causes, the constant attention on her personal life made her feel exposed and vulnerable, as if she was living in a glass box, always being watched and judged. Next, we explore deeper into her public life and hidden struggles, a royal icon's public image and private pain. His account helps us see the profound impact these experiences had on her. While she appeared strong and calm on the outside, on the inside, she was dealing with many pressures, including society's expectations, the burden of public attention, and the emotional toll of her personal life. His detailed descriptions let us look beyond the surface and understand the complexity of her character, revealing the emotional struggles she kept hidden behind her composed exterior. This contrast between her public and private life reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, and understanding someone fully requires looking beyond what's visible. But that's not the whole story. Insights from the driver, butler, and doctor together provide a fuller picture of a woman who, despite her glamorous public image, was deeply affected by the hardships she faced. These accounts reveal a story of resilience, vulnerability, and a constant search for authenticity in a world that often demanded perfection. Even with all that has been shared about her, there are still parts of her life that remain unknown. Future revelations promise to shed even more light on her life. The stories from the people closest to her show her as someone full of compassion and dedication, but also someone deeply conflicted and vulnerable. These stories help paint a more complete picture of her life, not just as a princess, but as a complex individual who faced the same struggles and contradictions that many of us do. Her legacy, shaped by the world's ongoing fascination with her, gains new depth with these insights, showing a woman who, despite her fame and influence, often felt isolated and misunderstood. Her life was a mix of admiration and adversity, reflecting the complicated and often challenging nature of the human experience. In a world where she was celebrated for her kindness and ability to connect with people from all walks of life, the same fame that made her a global figure also caused her a lot of pain. Those who knew her closely revealed that she struggled with the enormous pressure placed on her and the constant attention from the media. While she was admired by millions, she often felt lonely, which gives us a clearer understanding of the challenges she faced. These personal stories shed light on how her public role affected her mental and physical well-being, as the demands of her duties were overwhelming. She frequently found herself caught between pleasing the public and dealing with endless media gossip. She tried several ways to cope with these heavy burdens. From diving into her charity work to relying on her personal relationships, she sought relief wherever she could. Yet even though these efforts gave her some comfort, they also highlighted the never-ending conflict between her public life and her private self. One relationship in particular, with a more reserved individual, symbolized the normal life she craved. In this connection, she saw a glimpse of what her life could be without the constant spotlight, where she was valued as a person with dreams and flaws, not just as a royal figure. But even this relationship couldn't escape the pressures of her public life. The constant attention from the press made it impossible for her to find the privacy she so desperately needed, leading her to the sad truth that her personal relationships would always be at risk because of her fame. While she was loved by many, she struggled to find happiness in her own life. Her warmth and caring nature won her the hearts of people around the world, but according to the butler, she faced ongoing challenges within the institution, which played a major role in shaping her experience as a royal. But this wasn't the worst part. While the public adored her for her charity work and efforts to raise awareness about important social issues, some within the palace were less supportive. They preferred the old-fashioned approach to duties, focusing more on appearances and ceremonial roles rather than actively addressing societal problems. His perspective offers insight into the internal conflicts she faced, torn between fulfilling her duties and wanting to carve out her own path. Her humanitarian work was one of the few areas where she truly felt she had control and purpose. Through her charity efforts, she found a way to express herself, connect with the public, and balance the immense pressures of being a royal. In particular, her work on AIDS awareness and landmine removal allowed her to step outside the royal image and make a real difference in the world. This gave her a sense of accomplishment and helped her gain the public's admiration for her genuine compassion. Her humanitarian work became a powerful way for her to express her true self, even as she continued to battle the personal challenges that came with being in the public eye. The physical effects of her battle with bulimia were significant, causing serious health issues. This eating disorder, which involved cycles of overeating followed by purging, led to a host of problems like imbalanced electrolytes, digestive issues, and extreme exhaustion. Despite these hardships, she showed incredible strength and remained committed to her public duties. She continued to attend high-profile events and keep up her responsibilities, even when her body was suffering. We now turn to her last moments and the intense pressures she faced. Diana's final moments amidst relentless media pursuit. On the night of the terrible accident in Paris, the driver shared what was going on in her mind. She was focused on living her life on her own terms, despite always being chased by the media. The constant attention made it hard for her to separate her public life from her personal one, which caused her a lot of stress. The crash that ended her life highlights the ongoing struggle between her desire for personal freedom and the pressures put on her by the public. It serves as a stark reminder of how public demands can take away a person's basic rights, like privacy and safety. The story of her life also sheds light on her emotional struggles. Her role in the institution had a big impact on her mental health, and this was made worse by the media and the expectations of the public. She was often caught between the image she had to keep up and the reality of her private life. When the driver finally spoke on live television, he shared emotional details that touched people all over the world, showing just how much pain was carried by those involved in that night's events. People have analyzed the events of that night in Paris many times, trying to understand what happened. When friends talked about her life later, they reflected on the heavy pressure she was always under. It wasn't until later that the full extent of her injuries became known, leaving a deep sense of sadness over the institution and the world. Imagine the driver's shock when he learned about the severity of the accident while he was at home. His whole morning was thrown off by the news, filling him with grief. At first, he couldn't believe it, and he even held on to a small hope that she had somehow staged her disappearance and would come back. This thought helped him deal with the loss for a long time. But this wasn't the worst part. The constant chasing by the media had always been part of her life, and he believed it played a big role in what happened. Looking back at the crash scene photos, he saw the last thing she saw, a camera flash through the window. It was a powerful reminder of the chaos that always surrounded her. This retelling of that night's events didn't end with people simply guessing what had happened. It sparked many conspiracy theories, with people demanding a deeper investigation. The public's interest in her life and death only grew as they searched for answers. These theories, which were initially ignored by officials and the media, led to a more detailed look at what really happened. This didn't just focus on her, but also on the others involved: the driver, Henry Paul, her companion, Dodi Fayed, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones. Each person was a key part of understanding the crash. The speed of the Mercedes, which was very fast, became an important detail in figuring out what led to the tragedy. In most car accidents, passengers are expected to survive, especially if they're wearing seatbelts. Surprisingly, neither she nor Dodi Fayed had their seatbelts on when their car crashed. Henry Paul, the driver, didn't have his own either, raising questions about their choices just before the crash. On the other hand, Trevor Rees-Jones, who was in the front seat, had managed to put on his seatbelt right before the crash. This likely saved his life and allowed him to share what happened afterward. The crash occurred when their car, a Mercedes, slammed into a pillar in the Alma Tunnel in Paris. Specifically, it hit the 13th pillar, a small but eerie detail that has fueled various conspiracy theories. The force of the collision was tremendous. Dodi Fayed, seated behind the driver, was thrown forward with a force so strong it was like being hit by 3 elephants. The driver was smashed into the steering wheel, adding to the chaos and the severe injuries. She, though seriously hurt, was still conscious when the first responders arrived. She had a broken arm and some other visible injuries, but what no one realized at the time was that she had a critical, hidden injury in her chest. This would soon worsen, leading to her death. At first, she didn't fully grasp how badly she was hurt, which made the scene feel strange and disconnected from the tragedy that was unfolding. But this wasn't the worst part. Her condition deteriorated quickly, and by the time doctors realized how serious it was already too late. Soon after her death, a tearful nurse told the driver what had happened. It was a moment of deep shock. He immediately reached out to Robin and the butler to inform the institution and Downing Street of the devastating news. The weight of the tragedy was beginning to sink in. As the morning sun came up, the atmosphere at the hospital was heavy. He delivered the sad news to Robin, and they both expressed their sorrow. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, under the protective care of the Queen, had been shielded from the more upsetting images of the crash. He later remembered only seeing the back of his mother's head in the car, an image that stayed with him. He was thankful that he hadn't been exposed to the graphic photos, understanding how much more emotionally scarring that would have been. But this wasn't the end of the heartbreak. The hospital was gripped by disbelief when her death was officially confirmed. The grief was overwhelming, affecting not just those in the hospital, but people all over the world who admired her. That same morning, Charles felt the need to attend church. For him, church had always been a source of comfort, but now it held even more meaning in the face of such immense sorrow. His thoughts were focused on his young sons, who were now facing the reality of losing their mother and were thrust into the harsh glare of public attention. As the day went on, his main concern was being there for his children. He wanted to make sure they felt loved and supported during this incredibly tough time. In his talks with the Prince of Wales and her, it was clear that the institution was grappling with the grief in their own ways. Charles, especially, was very aware of his son's pain, wanting to protect them from the harshness of the situation while still giving them the space to mourn. What do you think was the real cause behind Princess Diana's tragic end? Was it simply a fatal accident or something more sinister lurking within the royal family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.